Chào mừng mọi người đến với Vela Podcast. Đây là một podcast chuyên chia sẻ về nhiều vấn đề quanh việc du học, học tập và cuộc sống tại nước ngoài của các du học sinh, đồng thời là cựu học sinh tại Vela. Mục đích của podcast là cung cấp những thông tin thực tế nhất đến các bạn đang quan tâm đến việc du học để các bạn có cái nhìn khách quan hơn và chuẩn bị cho hành trình du học của riêng mình. Podcast sẽ được phát hành 9 giờ tối thứ Hai và thứ Sáu hàng tuần. Nếu các bạn có bất kỳ câu hỏi nào cần Vela giải đáp, hãy điện thông tin một form trong phần mô tả nhé. Chào mừng các bạn đã quay trở lại phần 2 của chương trình Học SAT không khó cùng Phạm Tuấn Minh. Thì nếu như mà các bạn đã nghe phần 1 từ thứ Hai thì chắc là mọi người cũng biết Phạm Tuấn Minh là một bạn học sinh với điểm số SAT là 1560, cực kỳ ấn tượng. Và Tuấn Minh đến với chương trình lần này thì sẽ chia sẻ những cái bí quyết học SAT nè. Và chúng ta sẽ tiếp tục câu chuyện đi thi SAT cũng như là học SAT của Tuấn Minh trong phần 2 này nhé. So, during the time when you do the test, do you recognize some of your common mistake or pattern mistakes that you often have? And yeah, can you just tell me some of the mistakes that you often have?
I don't really have many common mistakes, so each time I've taken the test, the way I've made the mistake has been different. So I guess that just means that I've recognized that I made that mistake and I've changed it. A normal common mistake, so the example I just gave before is quite a normal mistake that most SAT takers. So there's this question format where you would have to choose the best conclusion to a paragraph, right? And really you can save a lot of time if you just instead of reading the entire paragraph, just read the first sentence and then read the last sentence, and then pick out the answer for four choices. Really, I guess I'll cover this. We can cover this later. But if you, instead of reading through the entire paragraph, which will take a lot of time, first off, it will also make you more confused. So your brain is limited, right? You have a set attention span, a set capacity of how much you can process within your brain. So you should try and min-max. This is another strategy that's quite important. You should identify what you do best and what you do worse. And then as you go through the questions, do what you do best first, and then do what you do worse later, after you've kind of saved up some time for yourself. So yeah.
Well, I see. Alright, so you said that we're gonna save that question for later. I just wanna ask what do you think about read the first sentence and then read the last sentence? Do you think it's a risky way?
It is a risky way, so to say, but if you think about it, there are four choices, right? And generally with how College Board writes their questions, 2 of the choices will be similar, another 2 of the choices will be similar, right?
Yeah.
Immediately you can cross out 2 choices, because if you read the question and you read the 4 answers, 2 choices will just not make any sense relative to the questions. And these are easier English passages, right? Out of the other 2 choices, it's one out of 2. So that's 50% of you getting it correct or incorrect. And if you're still not confident enough of your answers, then you can just read out the entire line, the entire concluding statement. So the last sentence with the answer you've put in the blank, right? So say George Washington was this and this, then blank. Then you can read out the blank together as one whole sentence. If that doesn't make sense, you can read the second last sentence, third last, and so on. So you can read it backwards. And if it flows, and this requires you having a lot of experience reading English text. So if it sounds correct, then it probably is correct.
See. Well, I thought that people who really wonder is this a risky way can take your advices into account. Alright, so let's come to our final part. It is about doing the actual test. So you think that from like what you already experienced, so do you think that people should notice what when they take the actual test?
So what should they notice when they take the actual test? So is this like what they should do before they go into the testing room? Okay. Don't overthink, don't think too much. So the night before, go to sleep early. Should be quite obvious. Eat a good dinner, eat a good breakfast, do some exercise. So make the testing day seem like a normal day as much as possible, right? If it's something normal, then your body will be used to it and you will be able to perform at your maximum capacity. So if right before the test, you're opening your notes and reading over them, right? And then you look at one note and like, I'm so confused, that won't be good for you, because your brain will start focusing upon that point to try and correct itself, and you'll slowly start to not lose, but kind of blur out all the other things that you've remembered. So a good technique to have with the SAT is not to be able to remember how to do things. It's to be able to spontaneously recall how to do certain questions. So instead of having to memorize all the knowledge within your head and then review right before the test, it's best to leave that window of time blank and relax. So not focus on something else, like go on your phone and read your text, but just to sit in your chair as you wait to enter the test room and just watch the world around you. So that's one of the ways I find to calm myself down, to kind of enter my most optimal state. I guess a way of sharing it would be, in my last test, my computer disconnected around midway through. So my test results actually didn't get sent through until much later on. So like after the testing time, I had to stay back for a bit to kind of make sure the results got sent through. But I guess I don't know how I managed to stay calm, but it is quite important, I think, being calm and being rational, being able to think. So don't obsess. It's just a test. Most schools don't actually require the SAT. Like, if you've looked at most of Bella's results, people with 1,500 more didn't get into the schools they applied to, and I probably won't be getting into the schools I've applied to either. But that's to be seen. So, yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that staying calm and well prepared is really important before the test. One more thing that I hope that we can bring it up here again is that consistency, because this is the keyword that you already mentioned before, like at the beginning of this podcast. So can you further elaborate, like, consistencies, like in the case of like reviewing and then practicing and like taking the real test?
So here's a metaphor for everyone. I guess it would be more like a simile. It's to remember how you learned how to ride a bike. If you know how to ride a bike. So your mind, like your body, is something that can be exercised, that can be trained to do something that you want it to do. Right? And it's really funny because your mind is telling itself to learn how to do this. But that's going off topic. But if you can practice enough, and this depends on everybody, but I think it's best not to practice too much. So if everyone's head of the form HIT exercise, right, it's best to have a kind of peak with your exercise and repeat that over and over again. So it's like extreme. You practice a lot and then you rest, practice a lot and you rest, right? But you repeat that, and that's what I mean by consistency. It's not just like you practice a lot right before the test, right? So because you're by practicing a lot, you're kind of getting used to the stress of the test itself. So because like your body naturally adapts, it's a wonderful thing that naturally adapts to almost anything. You're able to naturally adapt to the stress that's involved with taking the test, and that's quite crucial. Like something else to do with consistency within the test is to make sure you're consistent throughout the whole test. So one of the problems that I've faced during the first and second test was I was really fast at the beginning, and to the end I kind of slowed down because I'm like, oh, I have so much time left and these many questions, right? So what happens is the SAT's first questions are really easy. So it gives you a lot of time for the last few very hard, very tricky, very like double thinking questions, very questions that have two answers and really require you to dig deep within the actual question itself to understand the answer. So with that really, and this is especially true with English, the last few questions probably take twice the amount of time as the first few questions. Twice, I think the worst I've seen was 4 times the amount of time to do one of the last questions as compared to do like question 10. So yeah, that's what I mean by consistency.
All right. So do you have any tips for people when they take the actual test? Tips here, I mean, is for like what they should do and what they shouldn't do during like the time when the test happen.
I just remembered something that I should have mentioned before. So as part of preparing for the test, you should get to know the space that you'll be testing in. So if you know what the table, if you plan out how much table space you have, right, where you'll put the computer, where you'll put your blank paper, where you'll put your pencils, where you'll put your calculator, right? If you've planned out your space before, when you take the actual test, you'll know where to move your hands to get to the nearest resource if you've done it before. And this is part of the consistency as well. So when you practice, you should also be practicing like how you take the test, right? So I really suggest, because it's the digital test right now, that if everyone's doing it on a computer, they should get a mouse. So a mouse makes you very fast with moving through the sections. Also, because it's on one certain app, you should learn most of the shortcuts to do with the app. So a useful shortcut would be to how to open the calculator within the app, or the reference sheet, or how to highlight certain parts of the reading passage. So those are useful shortcuts that you can use when you're taking the test. When you're taking the test as well, don't hide the timer. So don't hide how much time you have left. That's really important. Each section was 26 questions, if I remember correctly. So in the English section, there's 54 questions in total, 64 minutes in total. So that gives you around 71 seconds per question. And that's more than a minute for each question. People don't realize how long a minute is. A minute, if you're thinking, is a lot of time. So you can read fast enough. So most people read at an average speed of, and this is people around the world, but people read at an average speed of 238 words per minute. So in a reading test, if you're more stressed, you read up to 300 words per minute. So SAT doesn't have that long paragraphs, long text anymore. They give it only in a short piece that's around 50 words, 50 to 100 words long, that you have to read. If you read that entire section, that takes you 15 seconds at most. You have all that remaining time to read the questions. So something that's really important to do when you practice is to recognize what question formats there are. So on the last few sections of the reading modules, there are questions that give you a bunch of evidences that require you to make a text that uses those evidences, right? You don't have to read the evidences at all. First, you need to read the question, skim over the evidences, identify what evidence you need to use, and then choose an answer from that. You can save a lot of time. I think at most for those questions, you can probably, fastest I've done is probably 30 seconds for those questions. So you can save a lot of time if you get used to the format. The format of the SAT won't change suddenly on you. So a crucial advice here is to believe in yourself, to trust the amount of time that you've put in. Don't contradict yourself too much. Contradicting yourself on the AST will more often than not cause you to choose the incorrect answer. So if you choose one answer and you read over the text, say if you've chosen one answer and you're reviewing your questions, and you, in like your 10 seconds remaining, you're thinking, oh my god, I just did this wrong, and you choose something else, it's normally you got the question correct and what you just thought was wrong. So that is pretty crucial.
This is painful.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think like that question is also the last question I have for you. So thank you so much. All the things that you bring here, all the information, experience, and advices and tips would be really, really helpful for the audiences, especially students who are gonna take the SAT, I guess, at the end of this year. So yeah, I hope that you, because you are like the first guest speaker of this podcast, and your score is really, really impressive, you know. That's a really good score. A lot of students going to learn a lot from you. And yeah, thank you so much. Do you have any last one?
Yes, I have a lot of things that I probably should say, but I don't think will be covered within 45 minutes. So if you're reading, if you're listening, I should say, make a practice schedule. So you should plan out. So what I did within my 2 weeks remaining, with I think 6 practice tests before the actual test, was every day I scheduled, so every 2 days I had a practice test, and then the week before the actual test, it was largely empty, so that was resting time for the test itself. So I only did like a quick review of the questions to make sure I could still do them, and then I think 2 days before, one practice test before the actual test, and the day before the main test I didn't think about the SAT at all. So planning is important as much as anything. Don't just rush ahead into doing practice. Like, you shouldn't be doing one practice test paper a day. That's too much. Even I think if it's like 6 months before the test, you shouldn't be doing one practice paper a week. That's too much. So your body can only handle so much. If you're doing a lot of practice at the beginning, then you won't be able to practice much at the end or the middle, where it's really important. Also about the math, and this is really important, you should get to know how to use Desmos, because it's a graphing calculator, and most of the questions in the SAT are about graphs, about functions, about linear relations, quadratic relations, and other such relations, I guess. If you know how to draw it, and you know what it looks like and what it means, that's half the answer already there for you. And you don't even have to write down the question, you don't have to solve it at all. You can just type the question into the calculator that's built into the app, and you've got half your answer. So yeah. But I don't think Vietnamese students will struggle much with the math.
Yeah, I think like that is also the part where they got like the highest score compared to the reading and writing. Reading and writing is like the two obstacle for them. So yeah. Right. So yeah, thank you so much for the last word, and I'm happy that you are my guest speaker today. I hope that all of the things that you plan ahead for your next 1 year gonna turn out to be successful, and I hope that you will have good health and still have enough patience for what you are working on. And yeah, I just on behalf of all the audiences to say thank you to you.
No, thank you for listening to me ramble on about things are not quite on topic, but yeah, thank you everyone for your time. It was great having you. Have a nice day.